You're listening to the RE Social Podcast with your hosts, Andrew and Vince from OnV Invest. For more information, go to onvinvest.com. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. It's not to be taken as financial advice.
What's up, guys? Today we have a super special guest, one of my favorite CPAs, even though we use Mark Kohler. Amanda Hahn is on with us. Hello, Amanda. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, hey guys, I'm so excited to be here. And maybe I'll replace Mark by being your new favorite CPA.
I know you guys are all so busy. I'm trying so hard to get Mark and everybody on the phone. They're like, oh, I'm busy for next 2 months. I'm like, I need to submit my taxes, bro. I wanted to let people know how we met. We actually met at the STR Summit, Tony Robinson and Sarah, they hosted it. And then we also met at BBCon 2022.
Yeah. The party for both events.
I know, good party people too. The hosts, they're really party people. So it's really fun. I know who you are because I've been stalking you online for the last few years. But for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a little background?
Yeah, sure. I love the word stalking. That doesn't alarm me at all. But hi, guys. My name is Amanda Hahn, and I am a CPA who specializes in working with real estate investors nationwide. And my passion is in helping real estate investors on how to save taxes using their real estate investments. By night, I am a real estate investor myself. So, I love going to the events that Vince was talking about because not only do I get to share my knowledge and expertise, but I also love to learn from other participants or attendees who are at the event. So for me, it's twofold, and it's never a bad idea when I can mix business with pleasure. So I can travel for fun, see my friends, meet awesome people like Vince and Andrew, and be able to take a tax deduction in the meantime. So you'll probably see me at a lot more of those in the coming years.
Yeah, that's so cool. It was really fun to see you guys and chat with you guys there. Do you have I don't know if you can disclose this, but do you have any famous real estate people that you are the CPA for?
Can I
You're
disclose
like,
it? I'll probably have to ask the client. I'm just for any of you who are part of Bigger Pockets. I am the CPA for Brandon Turner. He goes by Beardy Brandon now, but when we started working with him, he had no beard. So that's how far back we go. I also do tax planning for Tony and Sarah Robinson. Do a lot of consulting for probably, I don't know if you call them rich and famous, but at least a lot of the movers and shakers in real estate.
Yeah, definitely. I knew that. I just wanted you to tell because I didn't know
you
what
stalk me, so you know all that.
Yeah, I know. I also asked Brandon too. So I talked to him. I'm trying to get him on the podcast. I got to hit up his people. I got some information, but it's really cool. So I like to usually do the podcast like your journey. Can you go back like to the beginning, like how you started on the real estate investing? I know you're a CPA, which makes sense. You will be working with us, but how did you personally also start investing?
Yeah, it's really funny. So I'm actually the third generation of real estate investors in my family. So my grandparents invested in real estate. My parents dabbled in real estate. And then I was told to go to school, get good grades, and get a job. If you guys read the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book by Kiyosaki, I had the rich dad and the poor dad. It was like the same person. So it was really interesting. I grew up around real estate because my parents did it. So I was like, at the properties, helping them paint the walls with, tenant turnovers. I'm obviously not doing a good job now that I look back. But starting out my career, I really just, like what my parents wanted to do, got good grades. I got into one of the big four international accounting firms. And I happened to end up in their real estate specialty group. And it was totally by accident. And what I did in the first couple of years there was work on tax returns for a lot of large real estate companies. And that's where I met my husband, Matt, who also worked with me. And he was in the high net worth individual group, which are the individuals who own those real estate companies. So I did the company stuff. He did the individuals on the side. And so yeah, it was really interesting. And even, so being around real estate, working in real estate with real estate investors, still didn't ever think about investing in real estate. It's like, just never occurred to me I would do it until my husband actually read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. And I remember we're just like laying in bed and he just turned to me like, we should invest in real estate. And I really thought he was crazy, didn't know what he was talking about. But, then I read the book and kind of started, everything kind of started to click together like, hey, this makes sense. It's something that we can do. And that's kind of what got us started on the journey into real estate investing.
Man, that's funny because that's how we started too. Drew and I were laying in bed listening to Rich Dad Poor Dad too.
Just a nice boy sleepover, huh?
Yeah, love that. Yeah, we actually read the books and that's how we got started in 2018. And he was like, hey, bro, we should just get started. And that's how we got started as well. So how many properties, units do you guys have now currently?
Yeah, I mean, I have a handful of single families, smaller properties that my husband and I handle. In fact, my mom handles them for us because she's retired. And then we also invest passively in a lot of larger deals too. So syndications from apartments to mobile home parks. And we do so with, our earnings as well as with money in our retirement account. So, basically the strategies that I talk to clients on, like how to invest in real estate, how to use your retirement money for real estate. Those are all the things that we do as well. So yeah, super excited to be here to talk with you guys kind of about the journey of how I got started and where I am today.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fun to know that, no matter like how high level people we talk to, either it's you or the last episode we released was with Mark Kohler and then him, and he owns real estate as well. And we had like Gino Barbaro and, all the Kathy Fetke was on a couple of weeks back. So it's just interesting, like how everybody just starts off buying one single family home and then, just snowballs. Is that how it started off for you, just buying a couple of single family homes and stacking cash?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, the first property that we bought. It was really crazy because I'm the kind of person, like, if I hear something, I learn something, if I decide to do it, I just like do it. I don't think too much about it. And kind of real estate worked the same way. Once we decided we're going to buy, we just invested. And our first property that we bought was actually sight unseen. And it's kind of odd, right? That's not the norm for first-time real estate investors. But I do remember that we were sitting, ready to sign the closing paperwork. And back then, years ago, right, it was just like a whole stack of paper. There was no electronic signature, right? You just have to facing this large pile of paper to sign. And I remember just like my heart jumping out of my chest. I was like so scared, like, what am I doing? Am I really equipped to do this? Such a huge commitment, it's like signing your life away. But yeah, we're so glad we did. We've never looked back from then. The deals got easier and easier right after you do the first deal. But yeah, I think that the first one definitely was the most difficult one for us to pull the trigger on.
And how much was that property, Amanda, the one you bought?
Oh man, you'll kill me. So that property we bought was about $70,000. I know, Andrew, you said you were just in Vegas. So I'm from Las Vegas originally. And so I know the market, fairly well because I grew up there, went to college there. The first property I bought, that $70,000 property, it was like in a gated community and everything. But, back then it was just like real estate was the down market, right? It's the down market. And so you just, what at the time, no one was buying. So you can get deals all the time.
What year was that? Was that like right after 2008?
Yeah, that was around 2008, 2009. Yeah.
So you were buying when everyone was selling it or panic selling and like saying, "Oh, get out!" Like Interesting.
So I am an extremist. This is really interesting too. So like I said, my husband and I, we had, W-2 jobs, right? A really good lifestyle. And we decided we were going to stop working and do real estate. We're going to bring all the strategies that we know in working the big four with all these, extremely high income, high wealth individuals. We're going to bring it to everyday investor clients. And the time we decided to do that was around when the market crashed. So when real estate market crashed, we quit our job and we said, let's start a CPA firm specialized in working with real estate investors. And also, get pregnant, have kids, and, sign a lease on an office space. So yeah, just go all out.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. I have a quick, let's just kind of a random question. I'm really into psychology. So what made you decide, like, just go for it? Like, of course, the book, I get that, but everyone's always still really full of fear and, analyzing deals and still kind of not wanting to make a move. What was what was your biggest fear? Is my first question. And what was the tipping point? What finally made you say, you know what, let's go for it?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I've been asked that. So I think for me, the biggest fear was unknown, just like not knowing if I can do it. Like I said, I've been around real estate, but my parents or grandparents didn't talk to me about kind of wealth building that way. And, I was around it, but it was always for other people. So just my fear was, can I do it? Am I equipped? Do I have experience to do that? I think for me, the tipping point, and this, I say this to clients all the time too. From an investor's perspective, it's all about the numbers and the deal. So for me, I'm a numbers person, right? At the end of the day, like we didn't even look at the property. I mean, we saw pictures online. This was before like all the video tutorials. I just saw pictures, still shots, and you're like, okay, well, that's great. And what do the numbers look like, right? At that time, all the numbers made sense. So it's like, okay, worst case scenario, what happens? Am I able to keep this property? And as soon as the numbers made sense, I think that was when it was okay for my husband and I to say, yeah, let's go ahead and do it, right? Because what's the worst that could happen, right? In the worst case scenario, I'm still going to be okay owning this property.
And why is that? I know the answer, but I want the audience to kind of
Yeah, I mean, so for us, it's like in the worst case scenario, there are other ways that I can create income, whether it's income from this property by repurposing the use of this property, or I have other income where I can support this piece of real estate if I have no cash flow for 6 months or whatever it happens to be.
Sure. Yeah, it's great. And I'm assuming there was still quite a bit of appreciation, so you can always bank on equity and just getting out and probably breaking even at the worst case.
Yeah. I mean, of course, that's, that's one of the metrics we look at today, right? In the past couple of years, there's been so much appreciation, and that's one of the exit strategies. Back in the days, like, 2008, 9, when we were buying it, appreciation was a question mark, right? Like, is it going to appreciate?
True.
I'm not sure. But of
Vegas.
course, looking back now, people are like, hey, what's your biggest regret in real estate? I think my two are like, I should have started sooner, even sooner than that.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have bought more. I should have just bought like the whole community back then.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. I wish somebody sat me down, some rich uncle who knew the game and just showed me how to do it at 18 years old. But you're doing well. How many properties do you guys own now together in terms of units?
Well, just by ourselves. So it's funny because I said, I do some passive investments as well. Those I almost like don't consider my properties. I know they are, right? But I don't consider them because we're not like actively involved. So for ours, we actually sold quite a few about 1.5 2 years ago. For us, we're sitting on some cash. We're really excited to redeploy some of that cash. But in terms of hard assets, right now we have about 6 units. We actually are closing as we speak on another property right now. I think I'm supposed to be signing paperwork today. I'm not sure.
Are these all single families?
Yeah, single families, small duplexes and things like that. Yep.
Nice. Very cool. And so you cashed out and you paid the taxes on it. I'm kind of assuming here, even though the tax code very well. What's the strategy there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for us, it's really timing, right? The timing in years where we have other losses. Like I said, I'm also an investor in other people's deals too. And so one of the strategies that we use and we work with clients on as well is if you're selling real estate for a gain, right? Your own properties that you're self-managing or just things you're active in. And if you, in that same year, you're investing passively in other people's deals, if those deals are kicking off losses, then you can combine the two and get some good tax savings there. So that's one of the strategies we utilize. I also, one of the rental properties it used to be a primary home for us. So we turned a primary into a rental, and then we sold it within 3 years of moving out. So that was a pretty sweet deal where we had a huge amount of gain, but we didn't have to pay any taxes on that. So like I said, all the strategies we use with clients are are the same ones that we
Yeah.
use ourselves.
Can
So
you- Yeah, and just to break that down for the audience, just kind of like walk them through like what exactly that means. Like, why were you able to escape the tax bullet
yeah, you mean on the rental properties?
on the one that you bought as a primary res,
Oh,
and
as a
then
primary? Yeah, sure. So in the tax world, there is a primary home a gain tax exclusion. And what that means is if you own your primary home and you live in it at least 2 years, then you can sell the property and you don't have to pay capital gains. If you're single, you can exclude up to 250. If you're married, you can exclude up to $500,000 worth of gains tax-free. So that's the benefit of just a regular primary home. But what we did was instead of just selling the home right after we moved out, we turned it into a rental property. For us, it was multiple reasons. At the time, we're like, hey, we think this property is going to appreciate. We didn't really have a need for that money to buy our current home. So we just thought, okay, we'll turn it into a rental. Is really close to a local college here. So it worked out really well. And the market, like I said, kind of went up quite a bit in the last couple of years. So we was sitting on a pretty good amount of gain. So from a tax planning perspective, the key is if you have a primary home that you turn into a rental, you can hold on to it, but you want to try to sell within 3 years of moving out, because if you sell anytime within 3 years of moving out, you could still get that primary home gain exclusion of 250 or 500,000, right? Depending on if you're single or married.
I
So it's
actually
a
didn't know
really
that. Oh, that's cool.
yeah. So it's a really great way to, get some more tax-free gain. Now, I will say for those of you who are just like more into the technical details of things, you do have to, there is still depreciation recapture. So in those years when we were holding it as a rental, we took depreciation to offset the rental income we were earning. So when you sell the property, there is some depreciation recapture, but beyond that, you're still able to utilize the gain exclusion because it was your home.
Wow. And so if you sell it after, say, the 6th year, then what happens?
Then nothing. Then you don't get any more primary home gain exclusion. So it's sort of like a hard cutoff in that 3-year period. So if you're someone who has turned a primary home into a rental property, the one thing you should do, I mean, the one you need to do is talk to your tax advisor, right, to plan ahead.
Right.
But if you don't have a tax advisor, or if you're just, don't want to call them or whatever, at least put it on your calendar, right? Put a reminder to yourself, maybe like 2 years, 2.5 years from when you move out, have a to-do that comes up and says, hey, decide, what do I want to do? Do I want to sell or do I want to keep it? There's a tax benefit that might be taking.
Wow, that's awesome. Vince, do you have any input? I'm actually sitting here like picking her brain and learning for free. So
No, it's really good stuff. I actually wanted to ask you more nerdy stuff was for the depreciation recapture, what is the rate they capture it back at, Amanda? Do you know?
So it's typically up to 25%.
Okay, so if your tax bracket is 50%, you're still going to win.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully your tax rate is not a 25, it is 50%. It doesn't go that high.
Well, I mean, it go up to 65 in California, right? With the FICA
well,
taxes.
but we're only, the recapture we're talking about is for federal purposes, right? So yes,
Okay.
California is going to be a separate beast, and I'm sure you have audience from all over the U.S. Don't get me started on California. It's like a whole.
We all live in California, guys.
Yeah, we need like a whole different podcast just for California people.
Yeah.
But
That's true.
I think it's really interesting for your question, because I think I know it's coming from, because a lot of people talk about, depreciation recapture, like it's like the most horrible thing, it's like a curse of being in real estate and taking depreciation. And that's not the way I look at it at all, right? Depreciation recapture is simply saying you already wrote off part of the purchase price of the property. You're not going to write it off again, right? So whatever you took, you're going to recapture that, so you're not going to deduct it twice. But yeah, like you're saying, no, I mean, some people, if your ordinary rate is higher than the depreciation recapture rate, that's a benefit. And also beyond that, just the fact that you can defer taxes into the future, right? I'm taking tax benefit depreciation now. I don't recapture until if and when I sell. The time value of money of getting the tax savings is phenomenal, right? I mean, if I said, do you want to pay taxes now, or do you want to pay taxes 6 years from now or 27 years from now? I think we all know the answer, right? Most of us would have the same answer.
While you're selling a large asset, which is likely appreciated with a huge cash chunk anyway. So it's like,
Yeah, and I think a
these
lot
are
of
things that I have
investors,
to like break down for friends of mine who I'm just like, get in the game. I literally lecture everybody, so it's a problem.
I think that, and for a lot of investors too, they look at 1031 exchange, right? So if you sold a property and you're going to do a 1031 exchange by buying into other real estate, then you don't even have to worry about depreciation recapture, right? If you're doing everything right, there should be no recapture when you're selling and doing a 1031 exchange.
We actually just did a bunch of 1031. So we started off like, how you bought a $70,000 property. So Drew and
Yeah.
I had like $20,000 each. So we only had like 40 grand. So we were able to buy something for $250,000 in Bakersfield. So we started off our portfolio buying in Bakersfield 4 years ago. And we figured out very fast that, well, actually, we don't make any cash flow. In the last 4 years, we made $0, but we had a bunch of equity in it. So we started 1031 in them into Inland Empire properties. For those who are in California, we are slowly kind of trying to come closer to the beach. And then now this year, we started buying in Orange County. So, but we all had to start somewhere, right? So that's why I always tell people always want to buy, oh, I want to buy my dream house. I'm like, you will never buy a dream house. You will be poor for life because you keep thinking of your dream house, right? Drew and I bought over 30 houses before we bought our primary residences, because that's how we could do it. So what do you have anything to add on that topic of people waiting to buy like the dream home,
Yeah, that I love that you brought that up, because I talk to clients all the time about which property to buy, right? Especially for newer investors, like, which ones make sense. And I think sometimes people fall in love with the real estate or the idea of owning real estate. And when you start looking at properties, they start to see themselves there, right? Like, oh, I want to buy in this area, and maybe this is a property that I might retire here, or when my kids go to college, that this might be where they live. And that's something to, not that you shouldn't do it, but you just have to be aware of what you're doing, right? Because an investment property, at the heart of it, it's an investment. It comes down to the numbers. Like when you invest in stocks, you're looking at, okay, is this, this is company, whatever the performance is, whatever the projections are, do those make sense based on what I'm looking for? And that's the same with respect to real estate. So one of the things I caution clients is when you're looking at the property, look at it through the eyes of an investor and not as an end user, or, maybe my mom will live here when she retires or something like that. Because that's when you end up buying something that doesn't necessarily meet all of your investment criteria. And I think, like I said, for my husband and I, like our first deal, we didn't even look at the property. It wasn't like I was adamant, I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to shop for properties and fall in love with something because maybe I'll move back to Las Vegas, like if I went to Vegas, I'm going to buy property there. But yeah, I think you're right. It's, it's just getting in those deals and then exchanging up as you have more and more net worth and cash available, then you can get into the larger or better deals of what you're looking for.
Yeah, like we bought this $50,000 property and we spent like, I would say close to 100 grand because it was like messed up. but we sold it for $400. So we had 200,000, I don't know, 160,000 down. And that probably appreciate it's 5% and your net worth starts to add up. So it's very interesting how all these math pieces add up. I wanted to go back to your story where you were saying, you started buying. So people listening, they're going to be like, oh, this is great. Matt and Amanda make millions of dollars. Of course, they could buy a house every year. So how do you suggest that people continue buying houses? Because Drew and I only had money to buy maybe 5 houses. After that, we ran out of money. So the way we dealt with this, we started raising capital with friends and family. So is there any other way to do that? Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, and I think everyone's different, I mean, we have clients who are just high income earners who, have disposable income, right, to invest year after year. And then there are clients that, maybe like similar to what you're describing, where, okay, there's limited number of amount of funding I can have. I mean, even for those who make a ton of money, you get to a point where you're going after large enough deals that you have to work with investors or other partners, right? So, some of the people like you see on Bigger Pockets that are doing syndications and, funding and all that. I mean, they're very wealthy on their own, but they're not going to come out with $15 million, right, down payment on a portfolio of real estate. So I think for any investor, at some point, it is always a good idea to learn how to partner with other people. Now, whether that's partnering, like you said, with friends and family on a smaller scale to take down properties, or it's growing into a major business enterprise where you're doing syndications and raising money from equity investors, or even private note holders on your properties, right? Because at some point, we will all run out of our borrowing ability and our ability to do things on our own. So yeah, I think that, not all investors end up going that route, right? But for those who want to be active and want to be involved in this, in syndicating larger deals, that definitely is kind of the natural progression that we see with our clients.
Yeah, so for you guys just continue buying smaller 1 to 4 units as you can, and then you just hand out money to either, some Joe Farris or Brandon Turner with the OTC fund, right? So
Yeah.
that's how you kind of see it going, right?
Yeah, and I think for a long time I was gonna say for a long time there's been kind of a stigma, I feel, about being a passive investor. A lot of people I meet, we have a lot of clients who are like physicians, for example, and they'll say, hey, I want to quit working in my medical practice, exchanging hours for money. I want to do real estate. So they start off great. They have like a couple rental properties and they get some great tax savings. Right? It's like for the first time, instead of paying taxes, they're getting huge refunds. And so for my job is to say, okay, great, let's do it again. So every year we do the same thing, right? Make a lot of money, buy more real estate, buy more real estate. And inevitably, some of these people will get to a point where like, man, my real estate is now turning into a job. Right? I have so many properties that it's turning into a job. So I've left my medical professional job to now be a real estate investor job. And so one of the ways to continue building wealth and getting tax benefits is to also, leverage your money into larger deals like syndications and partnering with other people, where that's just more of your money working for you, right? So I think there's some kind of stigma around, oh, it's best to kind of do everything on your own. I think for me, I think there's nothing wrong with leverage. Having stuff on your own is definitely great, but also leveraging the experience and expertise of other people who are doing great things in real estate to help you grow your wealth. So you're really building passive income and not end up building a job.
Seems like the video is stuck. Okay, cool. I think you're back on.
Sorry,
Actually,
is
really,
it mine that's really laggy?
Yeah, let me see.
Okay. And I don't see Andrew at all on my end.
I think Drew's trying to join. We can continue. Oh, there he is connecting.
Oh, okay.
Drew's keys is back.
Hey.
Hey,
so
cool.
I didn't know, is it mine that's really laggy or is it yours, Vince?
I don't know. Is it mine? I don't know. Maybe it's all of us. It's California. I wanted to hit back to the high income stuff. So, what I tell people is, if you're working at Walmart making $8 an hour, maybe you should quit your stupid Walmart job and then do may do syndications or real estate full time. That does make sense. But if you're Amanda Hahn and you have your own company, maybe it's not the best idea to destroy your business and go into real estate full time, because that makes no sense, because you're a highly paid professional making hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why would you quit that and start for the real estate, right? That's what I told my high income earner friends, because the stigma is there. Like, they're like, oh, I could do this by myself. I'm like, but why would you want to do that? Like, you're getting most of the benefits, because if you look at the higher syndications and stuff you do, they split it 70-30 or 80-20 in favor of the investors. So it's like, if you have the money, it's better off you just do that instead. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly the way I look at it too. We have clients, and I think it's one thing, having a high income job or business that you love, right? You don't want to leave that. Like I said, we have clients who love their job. They're maybe like in the tech industry, and they just love the challenge of what they do day to day. Or people who are physicians, they love, making a difference. But they just want the job to be optional, right? They want that job or the business to be optional. Therefore, they're investing in real estate. They want to make their money, put that to work for them. And yeah, I mean, unless if you're someone who like hates their job and, just wants real estate to be their main thing, and those are the better people to, to say, okay, maybe I want to stop working and do that full time.
Yeah, and from your experience, we started doing it too. Drew and I trying to do some passive investments too. So do you see any difference or what is the difference you see in terms of internal rate of return, or just regular returns? Do you see more returns when you buy it personally with just Madden yourself, and then, or when you're investing in syndications?
Okay. I see. So you mean our own investment versus like the syndication investments? It really depends, because there's not like a rule of thumb, right? Because in the various syndication investments we've done, the returns are also different, right? So like a multifamily in Texas is going to be different than multifamily in Florida, and that'll be different than maybe like a mobile home park in Ohio. So I think it differs pretty significantly depending on the asset itself. What I always tell clients, for people who are looking for syndication investments, the due diligence you do is not just on the properties, right? When we're buying our own properties, we do due diligence on that piece of real estate, right? We do have the appraisals, we do the inspections, and we look at the market area and the rent. That we're just doing on the property. When you do syndications, you're looking at the property, but you're also looking at the syndicators behind the deal. Why is that? Well, because they are the decision makers of your money, right? So if you need to make sure your syndicators are people who have experience, who have a good track record, because if the people behind the deals are not great or not good, then your money is what is at risk. And I'll be the first one to admit, one of the first syndication deals I invested in, I lost all my money, and that was through my retirement account. I mean, not all my retirement account money, but all the money I put into that deal. And it was a really hard lesson for me to learn, right? Because I'm an advisor, and at the time I was new to this like self-directed investing and syndications. And so what happens a lot is people will say, hey, I heard so-and-so on this podcast, or I saw them on stage and they're syndicators, so they must be awesome. And so whatever it is that they're, throwing out there, I'm going to put my money, I'm going to jump and be the first one. But don't do that. Look at the deal. It's still your money. Look at the deal. Just do a quick Google search, like John Smith syndicator and complaints, or John Smith syndicator and SEC and lawsuits, whatever it is, and just see if there's anything that comes up. Because again, those are the people who are responsible for your money. As a passive investor, they're in control of all the deal flow and what happens with the deal. So you just want to make sure you do what you can to protect your money.
Well, that was really good. Yeah, sometimes you never know what do you get yourself into until you do your research. That's why I like I think it's Brian Burke. He did that passive investing book, right? He's actually, I'm talking to him tomorrow on our podcast.
Oh,
So
good. I love him.
he's a G. So I wanted to transition. I know you're a CPA, so I want to utilize some of your CPA brain. Now with a lot of the investors, including Drew and I, we are now transitioning out of a lot of the long-term stuff we've been doing, rentals, because we don't really make any money, let's be honest, after repairs and property management and CapEx. It's like we make zero. In the last 5 years, we made $0.0, right? Now, if you count the equity, sure, it's in the millions, but if actual cash flow that actually we can go buy like a nice car, nothing, we have nothing unless we sell the properties or exchange it, right? So we are transitioning to medium and short-term rentals. And how does that affect the taxes and things? What can we do to offset some of that higher income? Because a regular depreciation is not going to cut it if I'm making, 3 times more in terms of short-term rental.
Yeah. I mean, I love short-term rental. I actually just did a Facebook Live yesterday for short-term rental stuff. And
Nice.
yes, short-term rental, I love it, because well, from what we see, right, it's clients are getting a lot higher cash flow, which, higher cash flow leads to appreciation, right? Of a property, you can sell it for much more based on the cash flow too. And it comes with some great tax benefits as well. So this is mostly for people who are still working full-time, right? If you are someone who is working full-time and you have higher income of, let's say, over $150,000, if you invest in long-term rental properties, you can only use the losses to offset W-2 income from your taxes if you or your spouse is a real estate professional, right? And we can spend a lot of time talking about that, but at the heart of it is you're spending more time in real estate than your job. And so for people who are working full-time, it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to accomplish. And this is where short-term rental comes in. So the short-term rental loophole is that if you have high W-2 income and you're investing in short-term rental real estate, you don't have to be a real estate professional to use the losses against W-2 income. You just have to meet one of the 7 material participation rules. I say there's 7 rules, but there's only 3 that we really care about, that we see time and time again. So you can use short-term rental losses to offset W-2 income if you meet one of these 3. So the first one is you spend at least 500 hours on your short-term rental properties. Okay, so if you spend that amount of time staging your property, managing it, rehabbing it, all that good stuff, then you met material participation, which means you can cost segregate your properties, write off the expenses, and whatever loss you create offsets W-2 income. Okay. If you don't meet 500 hours, the other way to meet it is if you spend at least 100 hours on your short-term rentals and no one else spends more time than you. So we're looking at the cleaning crew or the repair guys or the landscapers. So we're saying, how many hours is Vincent spending versus each of those people? And if Vincent has more hours and he has at least 100, then you also met material participation. And the third one is sort of a catch-all. The third way to meet the hours is you spend any number of hours, but that represents more hours than everybody else combined. So Vincent has more hours than the gardener and the cleaning crew and the repair guys. If you do that, then you can use short-term rental losses to offset taxes from your W-2 and other income. So this is a great loophole, if you will, for a lot of our higher income clients that are both W-2s, and they don't plan on leaving their job anytime soon.
Yeah, that's yeah. I've been talking to Drew about all of this stuff because he has his own business, but he is a realtor and he owns millions of dollars of properties with me, right? So if he's not qualified as a real estate professional, everybody else should go to jail. Like there's no way. Like he's literally building houses every day. Now my question is, so for the second rule that you said, 500 hours is the safe harbor, so that's easy. If you can't hit that, the 100 hours, let's say I spend 101 hour, Drew spends 99, Drew's mom spends 98, his dad spends 87 hours. It's not combined. So I'm still 100, so I win, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah. I like how you said I win. Too bad, Drew.
Well, Drew we have enough properties. He can claim something else. But my question was, if we have to do cleaning and it takes 500 hours, what you're saying is just put it between 5 people, then we're good to go.
So that's an interesting question. That's one that we had clients ask a lot too, right? So for example, if the, my cleaning crew is Molly Maid Corporation, right? But
Mm-hmm.
today Molly comes, tomorrow Janice comes, and then we have Jennifer come. Does that mean that I'm spending more time than each of those people? Then it's fine. I think technically the answer could be yes. It is
Mm-hmm.
per person. Now, practically speaking, how would the court look at that? Would someone, if you had to go to tax court, would they say, well, actually, Molly Maid corporation is one individual for tax purposes. So we see that as one person. So you have to beat them all collectively. That's one of those many gray areas when it comes to short-term rental tax strategy, because short-term, to think about it, short-term rental itself, right, is a somewhat new area of investing, and audits have been low, right, very, very low in the past couple of years. And when returns are audited, they're not audited several years after it's been filed. So there hasn't been a lot of court cases, or any that I've seen, where they specifically address that question. But I bet in a couple of years, we'll get a more definitive answer on how they're going to look at it. So I think to answer your question, I think it would just based on your risk tolerance level, right? If you're someone who's more aggressive, you can be like, hey, yeah, I'm going to take the position that it's each cleaner and I'll have more than they do. But if you're more on the conservative side, you probably want to say, well, it's all my cleaners versus me, and let's see what the hours work out to be.
Okay, sounds good. So easiest way to do that will be send money to these people separately, then you're golden, right?
Possibly. Yeah, it's better than hiring
Yeah.
Molly Maid, right? The corporation.
So that's one. And then my other question was, how are we with material participation record keeping? Does it have to be as crazy as an Excel sheet that Drew's got, log in every 20 minutes for his real estate professional status?
Yeah, it's the same, right? So the logging of the time is exactly the same. And what I tell clients is, I understand, it's like, hey, I was doing it for 8 hours a day. Let me just put 8 hours. But the more detail you have, the better it is. Why? Because if you're audited, it's not going to be years from now, right? You're filing your tax return next year. Then they have an additional 3 years to ask you those questions. And if you're like me, I literally don't remember what I had for breakfast like 3 days ago. So imagine 4 years from today, it's like, well, Drew, what did you do for 8 hours of real estate, right? If you don't have documentation or at least notes to refresh yourself, it might be very difficult for you to prove what you did, right? It's just more time intensive for you to do that. So that's why I tell people, the record keeping is, you want it to be enough where you can be able to create those documentation to prove those points. In audit, in our experience, when auditors audit hours like that, what they'll do is they'll take a look at your time log and they'll say, okay, well, here's your time log is made up of 1,000 entries, and I'll do a sample selection. I'll choose 5 entries and test those. And if you can prove those, then I'm probably fairly comfortable this is a legitimate log. If I randomly selected 5 entries and you can't really prove most of them, then I'll probably select a couple more and a couple more until I just finally decide whether this is legit or not. So in a selection, if the selection is 2 hours out of today, that's much easier to prove than if one selection was 48 hours of real estate, right? Just 2 days of doing real estate. That's a lot of things that you have to prove for that particular selection too.
If we have let's say we have 40, 50 units, you still have to record all these things because it's going to be more than 750 hours, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that comes down to the properties themselves and what you're doing, right? So we always recommend doing the log because that is a way for you to detail what you're doing. But sure, if you don't have another job, all you're doing is real estate, you have 40 units that you're self-managing. Is it really important for you to have a log? I mean, probably not, right? Because everything through your email and your phone records, probably everything is about real estate and dealing with the properties. That could be a scenario where okay, the logging itself is maybe not as important. And I also wanted to bring up too, the method of tracking, right? Because I know you mentioned Excel, which is what we have and is what we have for our clients. But one of my clients actually it was in the medical field, and she created a real estate hours tracking app So I thought it was really funny because she's not a CPA and she's not a tech person. She's just like, someone like in medicine. That's what she practices, medicine. And she decided to create an app. It's called Reps Tracker, REPS Tracker. And we've had other clients use it and they really like it, kind of get you out of Excel world. And they have something that does like short-term rentals and long-term rentals that you can track those together and separately too.
What's it called, Amanda?
Reps Tracker. Yeah, REPS Tracker.
No, Drew, you didn't hear any of that. You need to track your stuff because he has his own business and he has an S corporation, so he's going to get hosed if he doesn't track because he makes over 6 figures in that business too. So his time is split between two. Now,
sure. Well, so then but you're saying your business is real estate, right? Real estate sales.
No, he has a guitar. He has a music school, McCormick music lessons. So he's a guitar player. So he teaches, but he runs the company. So he's more hands off now. He doesn't really spend 40 hours a day teaching, week teaching guitar, but he's managing that business too. So that's why I'm making him track all the stuff. And so, it's working out pretty good so far. Now, my question
I love how Vince says he's making it. Is that your CPA making him do that?
I am the CPA for my all the stuff here.
You're the CPA for Drew. Okay, got it. Oh, I love that. My son, I have an 11-year-old and he plays guitar too. He's pretty bad at it, but I'm hoping he'll get better at some point.
Well, send him to Drew school.
Especially kids, their hands are kind of just getting to that stage where they're strong enough and developed. This is a steep learning curve. So my advice is to you or for your son is 2 things. Definitely find, what he loves, because it's just so hard. It's just really hard to play guitar. It's a steep learning curve. So find what he's really, really excited about. And then go test out some teachers and he'll know. He'll come in the car, be like, Mom, Andrew's my guy.
Yes. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. I let him pick out what he likes to play. So right now he's learning Harry Potter. He's like listening and trying to learn the music himself. Great. And he loves it. He did like blinding lights.
Music is music.
Yeah. But the stuff that the teacher wants, he's kind of like, oh, I don't want to practice.
No, forget that. No, ditch that, because the teacher should be meeting him where he's at. And that's why I have a successful business, is because creating a music school is nothing new. There's thousands, tens of thousands in the US alone. But I took lessons long enough to where I realized this is garbage. Like, there's so many ways to improve this experience. And so I wanted to do that for, future generations. And it luckily worked out. I worked super, super hard. It was not fun to be around when the first few months of launching it, because I knew nothing about what I was doing, getting systems in place and all that. And then that came right after we bought our first triplex. So it was just, it's like, boom, boom. But fortunately, it's helped us to fund some of our initial mistakes, and I'm grateful for it. So I always like to tell everybody the guitar changed my life. It started making me like decent money, which is insane to think about. But back to you, in terms of what I should be tracking a little bit. I think our CPA, Vince, correct me if I'm wrong, he's like, you should have a calendar or tracker at least for like your music thing,
Oh, I think you're on mute.
All separately. Is that something you'd advise?
Yeah, I think so yes, if you have different businesses, right? Someone, you have a music business, you have a real estate business, those definitely the expenses should be tracked separately because they're taxed, I'm assuming, in different entities, right? You mentioned having an S corp.
Sorry, yeah, definitely the expenses for sure. I'm referring to the hours. Should I be tracking
the hours? Yes, exactly. Because one of the requirements for real estate professional status is you have to spend more time in real estate than your job or other business income activities combined. So if you're spending 1,500 hours in the music business, you have to have more than 1,500 hours in real estate to be a real estate professional. So yes, there's that added tracking for people who have their own business. If you're working, right, if you have a W-2 job, that's easy. You don't have to track it. It's whatever you're being paid full time is like, I think 2,100 hours a year. That's your hours that you have to beat. And I have people who ask me like, hey, I'm paid a full-time job, but I don't have to work that many hours. I'm literally only spending 4 hours at my job. So that has come up in court cases before. So the IRS, they're pretty strict about that. If you're being paid as a full-time person, you are assessed that 2,100 hours. They don't care that, you're also, surfing the internet or just, playing around, because you're compensated, right, for those hours, and those are considered work hours.
What are some of the common mistakes people make when they're trying to qualify for, real estate professional?
Well, so this is really interesting. I think that I think earlier, Vincent, you were talking about like, hey, Drew has a real estate business or own X number of properties. He must be a real estate professional. So just because someone is maybe licensed in real estate or sells real estate, that does not mean they are a real estate professional. Conversely, you don't have to be licensed to be a real estate professional, right? So that's the most common mistake. People associate that with license or some sort of designation, when in fact, real estate professional strictly comes down to hours and activities, right? So having the right number of hours, doing the right type of activities. And there's two different types of activities too, right? For real estate professional, you include all your real estate hours. So rental properties, long-term, short-term, rehabbing, fix and flip, commissions, you can combine all those. But you also have to meet material participation for your long-term rentals, right? So that's, actively working on the long-term properties themselves, whether it's acquiring it, rehabbing it, managing it. And so, from a tracking perspective, making sure you have an understanding of what the differences are between the two, because that's what allows you to use long-term rental losses to offset your other non-rental income.
Mm-hmm.
I have a super fun question. Everybody in the world would want to answer to this one. So and it's going to be not easy for you to respond. So I am living in my primary residence, right?
Mhm.
I have 2 roommates and a short-term rental at the back of my house. What the hell am I supposed to do with my taxes for this year?
So the back of your house, is it like a duplex? It's a separate.
It's an ADU.
It's an ADU. Okay, own separate entrance and all that, just standalone kind of.
Yes.
Okay, got it. So the way it works, so it's a little bit different from a tax perspective, and we're getting a lot of these types of questions a lot, like house hacking. So the way it works is actually different for the 2 roommates versus the back ADU. The ADU is treated as a separate dwelling for tax purposes, which means that if you create a loss, right? Let's say you're depreciating the ADU, you're having all your expenses, and that's a loss. You can use that loss to offset W-2 and other income as long as you meet material participation. Since it is in the back of where you live, I'm assuming you're doing everything with it. So probably meet material participation, right? So if you meet material participation and that creates a loss, you can use it to offset all different types of income you have. Now, on the 2 roommates you have where they just rent out a room in your primary home, you could still use losses, right? So you have allocated expenses and any related to the rental portion, you could still use that to offset the rental income from those 2 tenants, but you are not able to create a net loss and using that loss to offset W-2 or other income. Those are what's considered, renting. There's a tax term for it, but it's escaping me right now, but effectively you are renting out part of your primary residence. That is not going to create a net loss. Now, you can still deduct mortgage interest and property taxes, right? Just like how any homeowner would, but there's going to be some limitation when it comes to expenses associated with those 2 rooms or 2 roommates.
I have no income and I live in Kansas. That's gonna be the nice. Sorry, go ahead, Amanda.
No.
I know we're coming to an end. I wanted to just final question is, are you taking on new clients and does it cost 80 grand per hour to talk to you? How does that work?
Great question. So yeah, we're always taking on clients, but different times during the year we kind of we get maxed out just based on availability and things like that. So we actually currently have a what we call a strategic tax savings program. So it's a program that my husband and I we head up, and we work with investors as a group on how to create a tax savings plan for themselves. So we talk about how to maximize your deductions, what the best legal entity is for your scenario, depreciation, like real estate professional stuff. So all those things we talked about today, where, after a podcast, people are like, but what does that mean for me? What should I do? Does this make sense for me or not? And that's what the program is designed to do. So we have that coming up. We usually run it maybe, I think about 3 times a year. So that's the one that's maybe for more newer investors who might not need like you said, $80,000 of comprehensive tax planning. And so, yeah, we're really, we love working with investors on, how to best protect their money. It literally drives me crazy when I meet people who tell me some of the mistakes that are made. I just think it can't stand on the sidelines.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's a true marker of somebody who's successful in what they're doing, which is what you are. This is why you work with some of the biggest faces in the whole game, because that's the approach I think that winners take. It's like, even if it's not something new like CPA, you're seeing all these mistakes. And you're like, I just want to fix the world. Why can't I help everybody? Which you can't, obviously, especially at your level. But that's why you have to charge that fee. And when people walk in, you fix their life, fix their mistakes, and that's why we need you. How can people get a hold of you? Is there a website, email address, something you want to share?
Yeah. My website is so yeah, I didn't even say the name of my firm, right? It's Keystone CPA. And so the best place, if you want more information regarding how to save on taxes, go to keystonecpa.com, and we have a free tax savings toolkit you can download with additional strategies, and also like a self-assessment tool for you to see whether you might be overpaying in taxes. If you want to follow me on social media about tax tips, pictures of my kids and what I'm eating, you'll probably find me on Instagram at Amanda Han CPA.
Oh, love that. And then you recommend anybody to get started with some kind of tax CPA person to be on your team, even if you just have 1 unit or 100 units?
Yeah, I think it's difficult. It's not number of properties or number of income really, whether someone needs planning. I think a lot of that depends on not just what they have, but what they plan to do for the remainder of this year or early next year. And so, what I always encourage people to do is you don't have to hire a CPA right away, but start interviewing early, start identifying your team early. So whether it's talking to us or another firm, get a call scheduled, right, to see whether and when it makes sense for you to do tax planning. I think a good CPA firm will be candid with you and let you know, maybe it's too early, right? Maybe you're just not there yet. You don't benefit from it. Or maybe, now is a great time for you to get started. Someone actually just sent me a DM on Instagram 2 days ago and, kind of giving me a little profile. And I said, yeah, I think you probably don't need planning yet. They're looking, they might buy something next year. So that's like an example of like, well, maybe you can start looking again next year for planning. But nonetheless, if you don't know as an investor when is a good time, the best way to do it is to start interviewing advisors, and then they'll be able to guide you on when is a good time to contact them.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Thanks for coming on the show. It's been super fun talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for letting us pick your brain for free. Please send us the bill.
Yeah. We'll take you out for a nice lunch or dinner whenever you're in OC.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here, and I look forward to maybe coming back in the near future.
Yeah, let's do it.